Greetings, and thank you for joining us for the first episode of DC Animation with Spenser and Friends. This is an LMG Podcast Production. Today, joining me, I have a dear friend. I will let this dear friend introduce himself.
Y'all know me, it's Brandon. Nothing crazy.
You know, if you've been here before, you've heard Brandon. He is a part of the League of Melanated Gentlemen, of course. Had to start y'all out with something a little familiar, you know.
Absolutely.
Don't want to mix it up too much.
Right, we don't want to stray too far.
Yeah, I mean this is the first episode, but
right.
Know that you will hear some new voices. The plan for this show is that you will hear a different person every episode. That's not to say that we won't have repeat visitors. That is to say that from episode to episode, you will not hear the same person twice.
Right.
So Brandon will not be on the next episode.
Right.
But you will hear Brandon on the show again.
Absolutely.
So Brandon, tell us a little bit about your DC consumption, as far as comic books, shows, movies, video games, any of that. Like, what is your DC experience?
That's a good question. I would say, like, in my heart is DC. You know what I'm saying? Like, Marvel's kind of just in front of you, so you can't really deny it, right? But DC is where my heart is. That's what I grew up on the most, right? Because, you know, us kids, we grew up on animated series. DC, you know, had those. And as we're going to talk about, they had the animated movies. It was just in front of you more, obviously. And I just fell in love with the overall concept of DC. So, yeah, I read the comics. I'm a huge Superman fan, so I definitely got all the toys, and I watched all the animated series in the DC animated universe. And, yeah, man, I'm a huge DC fan. I'll fight for him any day of the week. I mean, I go to war with anybody about DC. So, yeah, man, I'm a huge DC fan. What about yourself?
Excellent. Same. DC is where my heart is. DC is my number one as far as consuming comic book media. As you said, Marvel is very in your face because they're behind the Disney machine. But since day one for me, it was definitely DC. DC and X-Men were what I started with and grew up on, and what I would say I know pretty well as far as everything. So, you know, comic books, the TV shows that were on at the time, the movies that were coming out, video games that I've played. I would say that DC is where my heart is. With movies, as we have discussed, DC is very hit and miss.
Yeah, that's good. That's a nice way to put it.
Yes, but I have discussed on the main feed how much I love DC animation, but I have not talked about DC animation. And I felt like that was disrespectful. So I made the decision, no, we're going to have a show about DC animation because they have a catalog of excellent movies. And so we're going to review all of them. So I appreciate you for joining us through this DC animated journey. We will be reviewing all of the DC animated catalogs, starting with today's film, which is Superman Doomsday. Now, if you have not watched Superman Doomsday, I would highly suggest that you pause me, you go do that, and then you come back, because that's what we are going to be talking about today. So, Superman Doomsday was released September 18th, 2007, and Superman Doomsday is based on the comic book The Death of Superman. I'm going to give a synopsis of the movie, and then Brandon and I are going to talk about it, review it, tell you how we feel, all of those things. So, without further ado, we open with Lex Luthor monologuing. He is admiring Superman, but also kind of hating a little bit. But he makes it a point to say that even gods must die. We are then taken to the Daily Planet, where Lois is trying to take down LexCorp, but the boss really isn't having it and is not trying to print the story. We are then taken to some LexCorp employees working underground. LexCorp is trying to harness energy from the Earth's core, and he is making it a point to be deep enough where Superman can't see what's going on. While working, they run into some strange something. They're not sure what it is, but they call it in because they're like, I don't know what this is. They confirm that it is an alien spacecraft, and Lex Luthor is pleased because whatever's in it belongs to him as far as he is concerned. The crew ends up puncturing the spacecraft, and a message from an alien begins to play. While they don't know what the message is saying, they do know that it is a warning of some kind. And then Doomsday busts out and starts ruining everybody's day. Lex then surmises that if the aliens were able to trap Doomsday but dumped him here, that means they couldn't kill him. While Doomsday is going on a rampage, Lois is trying to convince Superman to reveal his secret identity to her, and Lex is trying to make sure that Doomsday's emergence does not lead the authorities back to him. Superman is made aware of Doomsday and goes to fight him, and they are throwing good hands. Superman takes Doomsday into space and hits him with a seismic toss that kills both of them. Mm-hmm. The people are mourning Superman, and Lois goes to visit Martha Kent. Crime is up, and Lex is pissed because he wasn't the one that was able to handle Superman himself. So then we see Toyman is causing a problem. And as Toyman is causing a problem, Superman busts out of the ground and saves the day. Then Superman shows up at Lex's place, and Lex lures him into a trap where he just beats his ass. Like an obsessive, insecure man who just caught his significant other talking to an ex. Like, he's...
Would you leave me?
Yeah, like, he was not okay. Lex then starts monologuing again about how he cloned Superman from some blood that was left behind. Lois has suspicions that the Superman she's seeing is not really Superman because of how friendly he is with Lex. Lex is now pissed again because Superman's body, which he stole from his grave, has been stolen from him. We see that it is Superman's robot that stole his body, and Superman is now being healed. Superman's robot then explains to Superman what's been going on. The clone Superman sees that Toyman just killed a little girl, so the clone Superman says, nah, we're not doing that. And so the clone Superman kills him. Clone Superman starts doing some authoritarian type shit, and people begin to fear him. Lex gives him an order, and Clone Superman does some brain surgery on himself to remove Lex's control over him. Lois goes to visit Lex and wants to know what he did to Superman. Of course, Lex tries to have her, and she drugs him so that she can steal information. She and Jimmy then discover that Lex has been cloning Superman. Lex wakes up and is about to kill Lois and Jimmy, but the Superman clone shows up, and he destroys all of Lex's clones and then proceeds to kill Lex. The real Superman, not yet at full strength, must go stop the clone. So his robot hands him a kryptonite gun that Lex made just to be safe. Before he arrives, the military shows up, and they're just severely outmatched. Like there's nothing that the military can do about clone Superman. The real Superman arrives, and they start destroying more property with their battle. Clone Superman is winning, but then Lois shows up, comes through with the kryptonite gun, and Superman pulls out the W. Superman and Lois continue their lives. He admits that he is Clark to her, and we find out that Lex is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Roll credits. So there are, of course, multiple adaptations of The Death of Superman. And I will say, for those who are unaware, The Death of Superman was a very important comic book back when it was released. And it has been, as I said, adapted multiple times. But the reason it was important is because that is arguably the start of superheroes never really die.
Yeah.
Because whenever that happened, there was a lot that happened along with it. So Superman was actually dead for a little bit, and then there was Reign of the Supermen. So there were 4 different people that were trying to fill in for Superman. So this movie does a pretty good job of being comic accurate in certain ways. It's an adaptation rather than a direct. Well, I guess it's not as much a direct adaptation. It's just like hinting at what happens in the comic book. Generally, it's the same thing, but it's not like a verbatim story. So in the actual comic book, the whole Justice League is involved, and they just cannot handle Doomsday, and that's when Superman has to show up. And whenever it happens in the comic book, whenever Superman is quote unquote dead, there are multiple people trying to take up the Superman mantle. We will get more into that later in our reviews because there is a newer, updated movie, an animated movie that goes over the storyline, and it's kind of a 2-parter. So we will discuss that in more detail later on. But today, we're just going to talk about this movie as we saw it. So, Brandon, what were your thoughts?
Overall, man, I thought it was really good. It reminded me, obviously the art style I love just because it's kind of more the 90s DC animated universe style. I really like the voice casting for the most part. It was different. It's not as good as the, original series casting, but they did have Tim Daly, I'm pretty sure, and I loved him in Madam Secretary. But overall, I thought the movie was good. I thought it was a little... it was kind of tough, right? That story is hard to tell. And I'm glad that in the updated version, like you said, is a 2-parter, because this story is kind of tough to sell you on as far as like in one setting, right? He dies, he comes back pretty quickly, comes back and then, wins. So it's kind of a pretty quick turnaround. But overall, I thought it was pretty good, man. I really liked the viciousness that they showed Superman, right? Like, dude, and Doomsday. Like, obviously,
Doomsday was not playing around. Got right to it.
Yeah, like, and that's what I like. And again, this art style, I love this because the fight scenes are so good. Like, you feel every punch. You feel every time they get thrown into a wall or bust through a building or anything like that. Like, and just I feel like they do a good job of making you feel like when someone flies, and just the wind sound and all that stuff. Like, all that matters. And trying to project how powerful Superman is or his opponent is. And so, yeah, man, like I really love the fighting scenes. And I like the way they did with the clone Superman. Like, he was Superman, but you felt like something was off. Like, you don't know, and so I really like Lois. I thought they did a really good job of, because Lois has always been like I'm about that action. Like, I'm not one of these like damsels in distress type of girl. So she was ready to get down, and yeah, man, I just thought overall they did a really good job. I thought Lex Luthor, I thought he was pretty good. He's not as good, obviously, as the series, but I thought overall it's pretty good. When Superman dropped Toyman, like, I was like, damn, I forgot all about that part. And I was like, Jesus. And then they just showed him splat on the car. I was like, jeez. I thought he was about to mark that cat too.
Yeah, I was nervous for the cat.
Yeah, I was like, I hope he doesn't squeeze the life out that little thing. But
yeah, when he said like, my problem is not with the cat, it's with irresponsible owners. I was like, oh no, not the old lady.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's about to murk this lady. But yeah, man, overall, it was pretty good. Obviously, it's the first one. They were kind of getting everything started again and kind of trying to differentiate it from the series, which they kind of, paid homage to it, but also, did some different things, which I appreciate. So, yeah, overall, I thought it was pretty good.
Okay. All right. I will say, because it looked so much like the animated series, I struggled with the voice cast, but that was because of my history. So I knew what I wanted Superman to sound like. I knew what I wanted Lex to sound like, and they didn't. And so that took some getting used to.
Yeah.
As somebody who came from the 90s Superman and the Justice League shows and all of that. I was able to get through it, but I would agree that I prefer the other voice actors to these. The animation style was pretty close to the like I felt like I was looking at 90s art style, generally speaking. Other than Superman's like cheekbones, it was
they kind of defined it. I don't like that.
Yeah,
it was almost he looked old.
They sharpened him up a little bit. And so, that was not weird necessarily, but also took a little bit of getting used to.
Right.
But I thought this movie was pretty good. Since I have kept up with all of the DC animated movies, this one is pretty in the middle. Yeah. And as I said, we will discuss all of them, so fear not. But this one, it's, again, pretty good, not sensational. I will say the fight scenes were pretty good. The way that they made Lex like obsessive was interesting, because that was I think that was an interesting take, and I like it. Like, it gave Lex some depth, and we've seen similar things of like, no, it needs to be me. We've seen that with Batman and the Joker, for example. Like, if somebody were to kill Batman, Joker's going to be furious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, Joker said, nah, it needs to be me.
Right.
And I mean, Lex is that same way. And it's just so interesting how Lex loves and hates Superman so much. Like, he has so much respect for him, and he understands how powerful he is and all that, but also like, I hate
you. Yeah. When he said, "Why did you leave me?" I felt that. I was like, damn, okay.
You are hurt.
Yeah, you're emotionally tied to this man. Okay.
Yeah, like, the fact that why did you leave me?
Yeah.
I don't think that's what happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he got murdered, but it's fine. Or he died.
It was like he was trying to save the Earth from this unstoppable creature.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's called Superman Doomsday, but Doomsday was only in the movie for like maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Very quick appearance.
Like, Doomsday did not spend very much time in this movie, because
a lot of bodies.
But, Doomsday. Yeah, in his time, he got a lot done.
Yeah.
The moment Doomsday emerged, he just started going to work. What he did to the deer.
Oh,
a neck is my favorite kill. And he put his hips into it when he necked the deer.
Rotation.
Like he didn't even have to, like, ooh, like he didn't have to do that deer like that.
Right.
And he like scanned the deer a little bit.
Yeah.
But this movie, one of the things that I noticed about this movie is, again, there was not very much Doomsday in it, so it doesn't even really explain what the situation is with Doomsday. Like, we see the little alien pop up, but in the comic book, Doomsday is created on this planet, and his whole thing is he adapts. So whenever he's killed, he will come back and cannot be killed by whatever killed him before. So he adapts to whatever was the last thing to kill him. Right. So that's how Doomsday got to be so absurd and ridiculous, because Doomsday kept being killed or dying over and over on the environment that he was on. And so he would be reborn, he would adapt, and he'd now be immune to whatever it was that killed him that last time.
Yeah.
And so if Doomsday were to return in this situation, then whatever Superman, that seismic toss wouldn't work.
Yeah, that Kurt Angle German suplex wouldn't work.
Yeah, like he's gonna have to come up with something else.
Yeah,
because but they didn't really touch on that, because I feel like if you just watch this, then you're probably confused. Like, where did Doomsday come from? Why is he here?
Thoroughly confused. I was like, are we going to explain why he's here? Are we going to explain where he's from, the origin, anything? I just needed something.
Yeah,
a sentence.
And so that you, the listener, know, there is not like a sequel to this movie. This movie stands alone.
Yeah.
And so what you got is what you got.
Yeah. And limited information.
And that's why it's a good thing that they have another, like they have a redo.
Yeah.
Because later on, we'll discuss the official like DC animated universe, which starts with Flashpoint, and then there's a specific set of movies that follow those like that happen within that universe,
Right.
and they do that universe has a version of Doomsday, which ends up being the death of Superman and then the subsequent reign of the Supermen. We will discuss those movies later on, but if you were wondering or if you were confused, then you are not alone, because that is what like there was very little Doomsday in this movie. And so the title might be a little misleading. While Doomsday was in it, and Doomsday is the reason we got where we did,
right.
But Doomsday didn't have a lot of camera time.
Yeah, like if you tune into this just to see Doomsday fight Superman, you got some good action. Not a ton of it, but it's some good action. You know what I mean? Made quickly, so, made efficient work.
Yeah, like and again, like when Doomsday was on screen, Doomsday was catching, like Doomsday was working.
Bro, when that little girl was crying and he turned around, I was like, oh snap! Like
same. I was like, they're not gonna. This is PG-13. It's not gonna happen.
He walked to her with purpose. Like,
she was about. She's like, little girl, you better be quiet. Making all that noise.
Making all that goddamn noise.
Yeah. So it was about to be over for her. And I was like, and she's brown. Oh no.
Yeah, I know. He raised up. I was like, oh god,
that's not good.
Yeah. Homie was ready. He was ready to pull. He was ready to go for anybody.
Oh yeah.
So, and I respected that. They did a really good job of like letting you believe, making him a believable killer, making him a believable villain.
Yeah. And they did it in a pretty PG-13 way. Like there was a lot of stuff that was implied that we didn't actually see.
Right.
And one of the things, these movies like allow for a little more darkness later on. Yeah. There are a couple of them that are actually rated R, but generally speaking, they stay pretty PG-13, but it's a loose PG-13 because sometimes some of the stuff that they show, I'm like, oh, didn't think that we'd have that.
Right. No, for sure. It was like when Superman dropped homie from however many feet, I was like, Jesus.
Like, he like took him out of the atmosphere and they re-entered.
Yeah.
So like that was a seismic toss for your ass.
Yeah, I was like, jeez.
But I mean, that's what it took.
No, that was definitely it.
Because Doomsday
had to do what he had to do.
Doomsday was strong, and Superman had to do something. And one of the things that I always wondered was if this had been during the day, would Superman have done better because of the sun?
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Because this was a nighttime fight, and I'm wondering if that's why Superman struggled as much as he did. And I mean, not necessarily struggled. I mean, again, both sides were throwing good hands, but
oh yeah.
And I'm not trying to take anything away from Doomsday. Doomsday is a fucking problem.
Absolutely.
Like
he murked most of the Justice League. Like
he murked the Justice League until Superman showed. Like
exactly, yeah.
That's in the comic book. Like Superman had to handle it because nobody else could.
Right.
And so, and the fact that Superman had to die for it, just makes it even more clear how much of a problem Doomsday is.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of people that could not hang with Doomsday, and
absolutely
that was made evident.
Yeah, I appreciated like the desperation they kind of showed from Superman. Superman was like, he was fighting, you know what I mean? But then he sees like, oh snap, like Lois is in danger. Like, okay, let me get him, grab him, let me use the lasers to try to get Lois away from him, because if they are anywhere close, I have to worry for her life. You know what I mean?
Because he definitely said, like, Lois, you need to leave
now. Yeah.
And of course, she was like, no, but the action, but my man. Lois, leave. What are you doing?
Yeah, get out of here.
Like, you being here is making my job harder.
Extremely hard. Like, I'm trying to focus anyway. I'm getting my ass whooped anyways. Well, not to mention, I'm trying to make sure you don't die.
Yeah, I got to worry about you and this nigga.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, nah, you need to leave right now.
You need to get up out of here. Like, everyone is in danger if he's still alive. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, Lois, she's about that action. Like Lois was like, nah, I'm in it. We here.
Yeah.
And Lois, as far as I know, has always been that way. Like Lois does not have fear in her heart.
No, not at all. Like she'll hop in a car, a helicopter, a plane, whatever.
Yeah, she's like, no, we getting this story.
Exactly. Like I'm
we doing
following
this.
Superman. I'm following my man. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah,
I always respected that about her. Like she wasn't like, oh, Superman, no. Like,
yeah, she said, I ain't no damsel.
Exactly. Like pull up. Like Superman, you going here? All right, I'm right behind you. Like,
yeah, because whenever Superman dropped her off really far away, and she was like, "What? You dropping me off right here?" He was like, "Yeah,
yeah.
You see what that thing is doing?
Right.
Of course, yeah, no, wait here."
Exactly. So, yeah, that I respected that. I like their relationship. They did a really good job with their relationship, even when he was just Clark. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that a lot.
Because she was like, "Hey, I want to know who you are," and he was like, "I don't think that's a good idea."
Right. Yeah.
Because that's going to put you in danger.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I mean, he wasn't wrong, because if this had been a sequel, like, we know that Lex would have used her against him, because Lex found out, like, oh, y'all weren't just friends, were you?
Smashing.
Yeah. And then Lex tried to have her, and she was like, nope.
Yeah, I was excited. I was surprised by that. Yeah. I was like, yeah, we're doing this? Like,
yeah. She roofied Lex and then got on his computer.
Yeah.
Stole his hard drive. And then when he woke up, he just pulled a gun out of his jacket. He was like, all right.
Yeah. Like, you both gonna die.
Yeah, y'all got to die. That's how it's
going
to be.
Bro, when he shot that secretary, I was like, oh.
Yeah, when he shot Mercy, because I forgot that happened. But yeah, Lex had no loose ends.
I was like, oh, snap.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Like, it was like, have you made sure that LexCorp will not be involved? He was like, LexCorp was never there. Good. Click, clack. Wow. Oh, no. Mercy's dead.
I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. Like, I'd forgotten all about that kill.
And it's funny because sometimes Mercy is a robot and sometimes Mercy is a person.
Yeah.
And P.S. shout out to Cree Summers. That's who voiced Mercy. I heard it.
Okay.
Of Cree Summers. But and Cree Summers is in everything. And I'm glad she's getting her checks. And has been for decades. But yeah, when he shot Mercy, I was not prepared for that. And I've seen this movie before.
Right.
It's been a while, but like I'm glad I'm going back through this journey.
Right.
Because again, like most of these movies are very good. Some of them are just okay, but there aren't very many that are just bad.
True.
Like a lot of them are excellent, like very good quality. And that's why we're doing this show, because we need to talk about it.
Have to. They deserve time. You could do a whole, like I said, each one deserves its own time, own attention. I want to correct myself. I said Tim Daly was the voice of Superman. It's actually Adam Baldwin in this movie. Tim Daly's, in everything else, the main one who's in the series and Justice League. I love him. He was in Madam Secretary. Love him. This guy was cool. It wasn't like a noticeable drop off, but it definitely wasn't the same.
Yeah, and I knew it wasn't Tim Daly, and when he started, I immediately noticed, and like I was just like, not Tim Daly.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that I'm able to get over if Superman doesn't look like 90s Superman.
Right.
Yeah, like it's because I was looking at what felt like 90s Superman, and so I wanted to hear 90s Superman.
Exactly. It's just like if I see a 90s style Batman, like I know what voice. Yeah, he's like, I have to have that voice, otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if the visual, I didn't realize how important and how effective the visuals were for me, or how much they determined what I expect, rather. Because with specific art styles, I'm ready for specific voices for certain people.
Right.
And so with this one, like, I was prepared for Tim Daly and I was prepared for Mr. Krabs to be Lex, and that's not what happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's fine.
Right.
It's going to be okay. I was able to get through it, and it was still a good movie.
Yeah. I had a good time with it.
Yeah, definitely not my favorite, but it's still very good. And again, like, to me, as far as just movies go, this is pretty good. But as far as the DC animated catalog, this is very in the middle.
I think at the end of this entire journey you go on, you might do a little rankings. Where you put them all, because this is a lot of movies.
I think there are almost 50 just DC animated movies from 2007 to today in 2023.
Yeah.
There are, I think, 49. And that's not including like showcases.
Right.
And that's not including anything before. That's not including like Mask of the Phantasm. And that's not including any of that stuff, or if there are any other shows that had movies. So like I don't think any of the, like, that's not including like the Teen Titans movies or anything.
Right.
So there's a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you're here for it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you listening. I'm glad you're here for it again. I want you to take this journey with us through the DC animated catalog because it is so good. And there's a lot that you can learn from it because a lot of it is pretty comic accurate.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And of course, that can be hard to say because they do a reset every so often. And so it's a matter of like, okay, which comic is this accurate to, or what is this being representative of? So, and there's a pretty wide range of stuff. So just like, of course, there are multiple directors and stuff, but with this, there are a lot of different visuals. So there are so many different art styles that you are going to see through this journey as well.
Absolutely.
Because there are some of the movies that stand alone, and then there are some of the movies that belong in a universe of some kind, and you can see where the art styles connect with those. Yeah. There are some part 1, part 2 things in here, like Batman's got some part 1, part 2s that are really good. And so this movie is probably, well, it's probably in the middle. I know what my favorite Superman solo movie is, and we're going to talk about it when we get there. Superman's got a few. And Brandon, would you say that Superman is one of your favorites?
Absolutely. He might be, he's 1 or 2. He's up there, top 3 guaranteed. I've always loved Superman. I've always loved the Clark Kent aspect, but just power set alone is dope. But then also, it's kind of cool to watch somebody who's, like OP, just literally could do whatever he wanted, but then chooses to do what's right. You know what I mean? Has a humble beginnings,
Because there was a guy in the movie, he said, like, I was about to fall off 3 stories, and Superman saved my life.
Exactly.
Like, he's the reason I'm not like broken right now.
Right.
And saving cats from trees and all of that. Like, he doesn't have to do little day-to-day things for individuals.
Right.
And that's how he wants to spend his time, is helping people. We see in the movie he's trying to cure cancer.
Yeah, facts.
And we see Lex say pretty much a cured patient is a lost customer. But then we see Superman saying, I don't even have this problem. Like, human cells metastasizing is not a me issue.
Right.
I can't get cancer, but I want to help human existence, and I'm trying to cure cancer. He said, I can do all of this shit. I can call a star from light years away if I want to. I can see into the future sometimes, but I can't cure cancer.
Right.
But like I said, right before that, we see Lex being the representation of greed and capitalism.
Exactly.
We see Lex say, did we cure muscular dystrophy? Yeah, but slow it down a little bit. Like, make sure they're on the medication for a while.
Right.
So we can get our money. And then, let them be fine.
Right. Definitely realistic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Lex is exactly what we see. Yeah. And I'm glad that DC is saying, yep, here it is.
Yeah. And to get outside but that's what's so frustrating about DC, the movie universe, is like the live action is just like, dude, you have such easy, you could do a whole run where Luthor he's just the main villain. You don't even talk about Darkseid for a while. He's just because he's so good. Like he's so evil that he does so many different things, and he's obsessive over Superman. He hates the rest of the Justice League, but he obviously hates Superman, and he's smart enough and more conniving enough to figure out ways to, because he doesn't have any powers originally, and it's like you could just roll with that if you just pick the right character and not one of the worst portrayals we've ever seen as far as Luthor is concerned.
My least favorite. Like that is my least favorite casting, period, that I can think of.
That took me out of the entire movie. Like I was never going to like that movie.
And just so the people know, that was another version of the death of Superman, where we see Superman fight Doomsday, he dies, and then he kind of comes back. But the way they did it wasn't great.
It was extremely rushed. It wasn't
poorly executed.
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate that their live action sector is going through this, because all of these animated movies are proof that they have all of the material and all of the content that they need.
Yes.
Like it's like the stories are there
all day.
You just have to successfully adapt them, because there's no shortage of content.
Oh yeah. I mean, story-wise, DC is better than anybody.
And that's the thing. That's what a lot of people don't know is we see the MCU putting out a good product as far as the big screen. Mm-hmm. And we are watching DC do everything else so well.
Right.
Like DC's video game catalog is excellent. All of their shows, matter of fact, some of their live action shows are
good.
Like DC's output of everything other than big screen movies is mostly like A's and B's.
Yeah.
If you're given grades.
Right.
But their movies, their live action movies are just so hit and miss. And they can do it because we've seen them hit.
Right.
We know that The Dark Knight is a thing that happened. And The Dark Knight is regarded as one of the greatest superhero movies to ever happen.
Exactly.
Period. To this day. Like even with the MCU, The Dark Knight for a lot of people is number one.
Right.
And that's DC. As much as people don't want to admit it or talk about it or whatever. No, DC did that.
Facts.
And, there are the random gems. Again, there are the like little standalone things. Now, DC has always been hit and miss, because I remember George Clooney and his nipples being Batman.
Hey, man, I'll defend that movie. Just from my childhood. My childhood has to.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That.
Yeah, nostalgia and the eyes I had at the time were perfectly okay with what killed the dinosaurs, the Ice Age. Like my child eyes were pretty okay with that.
Right.
But DC's got some hits and some misses as far as live action movies go. Now, Marvel does too. If we're really talking about it, but as far as quality, Marvel has a pretty high standard of quality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Specifically the MCU. I'm not going to say Marvel because there's some misses there too. Like Sony did some stuff. It's like, why did you do that?
Exactly.
But I said all of that to say DC has everything that they need. They have all of the pieces.
Yeah.
They just have to put them together in a way that makes sense. And I think that the MCU, what I kind of wonder is if the MCU hadn't done what they did and done it so well, what would DC have done? Because I think that the MCU is what caused the Snyderverse to fall apart. Because they were trying to replicate that success far too quickly. They didn't go through the formula. They didn't build it up like they needed to. They just tried to rush straight into it because it was too late by the time they realized, like, oh, this is what we should have been doing all along.
Right.
Because I don't think they understood how much people would care about a connected universe and how possible a connected universe can be, because to have, Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman on screen at the same time didn't seem feasible, I imagine.
Exactly.
And then when Marvel was like, no, it's we can do it. Right. Here it is. But they built it correctly, in my opinion. Like they did it the right way. They did it over a long period of time, and they gave you individuals first. So they let you fall in love with these characters, let you know who they are, gave you backstories, helped you understand what their motivations are, and they gave you like each character before they brought them together. So you cared about all of them, and you now understand, okay, this is a threat that can't be handled by one of them individually. And so we are going to have to combine forces in order to handle this.
Right.
And so, DC, they were late to the party, unfortunately. Because
cost slipping.
Yeah, like DC should have been doing this a long time ago. And
they should have had a comprehensive plan. When Dark Knight hit the way it hit, they should have immediately come up with a plan. Even if, that wasn't going to be your Batman for the future, you at least have a comprehensive plan, so then you can adapt however you need to adapt.
Because they did it in the animated space. We saw Batman the animated series, and we saw Superman the animated series, and we saw people from each other's show showing up whenever Batman had his new adventures. We saw the Superman from the animated series show up in that, and then we saw them all come together in Justice League, and we had already seen some of the people from Justice League in the previous shows. So in animation, they had done it. They figured it out, and they just couldn't do it in live action, or they just didn't do it in live action in time. And maybe it was budget reasons, or what have you.
Yeah, I think it was greed. It was taking the audience, thinking the audience is dumber than they were. Right? I think they thought, let's just skip all that shit. No one cares. If you put Superman and Batman in a movie, we're gonna make money. And it's like, no, we're in a different generation. If you did that in the 90s, sure.
Oh, absolutely.
You would have racked up money. But now
even if it was a bad movie, like
even if it was bad,
still.
Yeah, people would have been like, Superman, Batman, like, what are we talking about? I'm going to the movies. Where now we're more sophisticated, and we've been around through the Marvel movies. We know what a superhero movie can be, like you mentioned. So now when you just throw together Superman and Batman together, we don't know who these people are. If they have a conversation, we don't really care like that, or we don't understand the ramifications, because I don't know who is this Superman? Who is this Batman? This is a totally different Batman than we've ever seen before. So it's like, yeah, like I think they took for granted how smart fans are now. And this the millennial generation is the generation that like really dove into this nerd culture and really dove into comic books and the animated series that we all love. So we know these characters probably better than any generation before it, like for real. And so, yeah, like we're going to critique it with a fine-tooth comb. Like, no, Batman wouldn't do that. Batman ain't using guns. Like Batman ain't, you know what I mean? Superman ain't just snapping dude's neck just cause, Yep. So yeah, I just think it was greed. It was trying to make a quick cash. And then also they just thought, people would just show up just cause.
And it could have been licensing and like rights and stuff. I don't think it should be, because
have any issues. Yeah.
DC owns all of them. But like when I think about Smallville, for example, I don't think Batman ever showed up in Smallville, but I think everyone else did.
Literally everybody. Yeah.
Like Aquaman was in there. Flash was in there. Like there was
Fate. Yeah.
There was a version of a lot of people. Martian Manhunter. Like there were a lot of people in Smallville, but I don't think Batman was ever in Smallville. So
I don't think so.
I mean, and just like with Marvel, like we know that the Hulk, Spider-Man, and Iron Man are all Marvel characters, but there was a time when they could not be on screen together.
True. I don't know if it's a rights thing, just because I don't think Batman has ever been sold or Superman has been sold. Now they may have had like a rule, maybe contract or something with, I forgot what Smallville was on WB. So yeah, I can't see why. Maybe they just want to keep it in Kansas. No reason for them to.
Because I know that, like, I didn't see Batman in anything that didn't have his name on it very often.
True. Yeah, they did. They definitely don't just splash him in any series. Usually you're coming to visit him, not him coming to visit you.
Because I know that there was, I think, a 2-part arc when he was in Superman the Animated Series, and right. he was about to have Lois.
Yeah,
but, you know, Bruce.
Yeah, exactly.
But other than that, because I mean, in Teen Titans, there was no mention of Batman.
Nope.
In Smallville, there was no mention of Batman. In the Arrowverse, they barely mentioned Batman.
Yeah,
it took a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
they
when they
mentioned anybody, it seemed like the big 7.
Yeah, and when they finally did mention him, it was hilarious because Oliver was like, "He's not real, guys."
Yeah,
but the reason for that is because it was very clear to those of us who know that version of Oliver Queen was very much based on Batman.
Yeah,
like he was almost Batman.
Right.
And that's why they built the universe around him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, a lot of sidebars. This movie was pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Definitely a really good starting point for that animated universe, movie universe that they started 2007. So yeah, I think it was a really good start. Obviously, you guys will break down all the great things coming after that. But yeah, man, anything Superman, I'm down to watch. I just think he's probably the greatest character ever. And he's one of the more misunderstood characters ever. And so it's really, anytime you get to see him more, it's really cool.
Well, Brandon, there are definitely more Superman movies. And so if you are interested in being on the Superman episodes, we can definitely make that happen.
Absolutely. I can be your Superman correspondent.
Sound like somebody just got online on the Xbox. you know. Yeah. But yeah. So, Brandon, if you had to give this movie a rating, and I want you to do your best to rate this movie on its own. Like, try not to compare it to anything else. I know that's hard to do, but
right.
if I said to you, hey, just with what you saw, what would you rate this movie?
I'm going, can we do halves?
Oh, yeah.
We do halves here on Spenser and Friends. I will do 6.5.
Okay.
It was strong 6.5. It was good. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't game changing. There was a lot of holes and a lot of information that I kind of needed that wasn't there. Some of the animation choices I didn't love, but they weren't like drastically bad. I just didn't vibe with them as much. But overall, I thought it was good.
Okay. I actually agree. Like 6.5 is what I was thinking, because and for a lot of the same reasons. Like, it was a solid movie. But looking at this as somebody, like, if I were somebody who didn't know anything, then I'd walk out saying there's a lot I still don't know.
Right.
Like, how did Doomsday, like, I don't know anything about Doomsday, but Doomsday's in the title.
Right. How's he this strong? We don't know where he's from, why he's doing what he's doing, nothing.
Yeah, because the robot gives like a very brief, like, this is what the situation is. But like, that's it. Like, we don't really know anything. And I would like to have had like a little, like, 3 minutes where we see Doomsday like being born, and
a little montage.
Yeah, a little montage, like what Doomsday went through, and then him getting so powerful that the aliens that made him were like, oh shit, we need to do something. And yeah, like, I want to see how Doomsday got here, instead of just, we're underground, we see a ship, it opens up, Doomsday starts killing people, then Superman kills him. That's what happened.
Right.
And I would like to have seen a little bit more. And and again, it wasn't a bad movie. But
no.
I feel like there were some things missing, but this was the first one.
Exactly.
And so that's why, like, very middle of the road as far as DC animation goes, but pretty solid on its own. There were some highlights, and maybe this is unfair, but I am docking it a little bit because the voice acting wasn't bad, but I had an expectation for voice acting.
Yeah, when I going into it, I expected the original cast that was from the animated series, just like you said, due to the art style. Threw me off a little bit, so that it took me some minutes into the movie to kind of get used to that, which
Same.
not their fault, but I mean it is what it is. If you have a really legendary show and you use the same art style, you're setting yourself up for people to have expectations.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it wasn't bad, but it was not sensational.
Exactly.
And trying to look at it on its own, I feel like there were some things that were missing. And then looking at it in comparison to the rest of what we have, there were some things missing. But this is a very early movie. And so that is to be expected. Like, this is just the beginning of DC animation. And a lot of them are as pretty good as this one was. Most of them are better than this one. Like, I'd say this movie is probably in the bottom half.
That's accurate. Yeah.
And that should let you know that the rest of there's some quality stuff in here.
Yeah. I'm excited to listen to you guys kind of go through them. Cause I mean, there's, like you said, there's some bangers in there that's like, and they're a lot, not even like centered around, Superman or Batman. Some of them are just random characters that are just really good.
There are a lot of people that have their own movies.
Yeah.
And then we have full league movies as well. So we are definitely, we're going to get into all of it. Brandon, did you have anything else?
That's it, man. I appreciate you having me on your first episode. Folks, really tap into this one, man. It's going to be a fun ride. Most of us love DC and know and appreciate it, and especially DC animation. So I'm glad that you get to focus on it.
And if you don't love DC, then take this journey with us and see if your mind changes. Yeah. Because I would argue that if you don't know DC or if you actively dislike DC, then these movies will change your mind. Because I think there's that much quality in these movies. Now, I will admit it may take a minute to get to that level of quality because we are very early. We're just starting. And they find themselves a little bit more as we get later on. Because, like I said, they build an entire animated universe. Because we have the animated shows universe, which is, 90s into the early 2000s.
Right.
And then they build a New 52 universe. And that one is great. But again, there are also some excellent standalone movies that have nothing to do with that universe. And all of it is just wonderful because that's one thing that DC does do well is whenever they make standalone items, they're usually very good.
Yeah. Very focused, very good.
Because DC has the option of not living in the continuity that we're all familiar with in the like huge, large universe that everybody knows about. Like DC also builds stuff on the outside of that stands by itself and does well on its own.
Yeah, I think that's conducive to like we talked about before. Their roster is just so deep that it's like you can make a Constantine movie and people be like, bet, all right, cool. You know what I mean? And so, if you made a Doctor Strange Marvel movie, I love Doctor Strange, but I don't know how many people are like, just like, I gotta go see that, So, so, yeah, their roster's so deep that there's so many ways they can go and that they have gone. For the most part, they haven't missed.
Yeah. So this will be a fun journey. I thank you for joining us on it. In the next episode, we will be discussing the second movie, which is Justice League The New Frontier. So until then, salutations.